Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our final live Fringe Talkback. My name is Kate Coley, and I am the 2020 Cincy Fringe Talkback producer, and I am here this evening for our last Talkback with the wonderful Megan of Lady Macbeth and her pal Megan. Megan, if you can introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get started with some questions. Audience members, please feel free to put questions in the Facebook comments at any time, and we'll get them answered for you.
Hi, I'm Megan Gogarty. I'm the playwright and performer of Lady Macbeth and her pal Megan, which I brought to Cincy Fringe originally in 2017, and it had the very best time. And now here we are doing an encore performance for y'all in this very, very weird 2020.
Great.
That's who I am.
Yes, thank you so much for being here, Megan. So I'd love to get started by asking you about sort of the origin story of this piece. So tell us a little bit about how you decided to turn this pursuit of being seen as a Lady Macbeth type into a whole show with this journey of self-discovery and reflections on being a woman in comedy. So what was that process like, going from life experience to now it's a play for a Fringe?
So when I write a play, it's never just one idea. I have to have two ideas, and then they have a baby, and the baby is the play. So the two ideas that were in love with one another for this play was a conversation I had with my friend Alexis about whether or not I could play Lady Macbeth. And that was really a larger conversation about typecasting.
Yeah.
Typecasting is such a weird idea. As a playwright, I find typecasting to be so weird. But if you're an actor, if you come out of acting school, one of the first things you learn about yourself is your type and how to exploit it and blah, blah, blah. But of course, type is such a fraught idea. It's so full of, racial and sexist bias. And so we were wrestling about whether I could or could not play Lady Macbeth. So that was one fun conversation I was having with my friend. The other idea was I had been getting a lot of interviews, and I don't get this question anymore, but I used to get it a lot, which is, what's it like to be a woman comedian? And I used to get real harumphy about it. Like, what? How dare you ask me such a sexist question? Because you don't ask, dentists what it's like to be a lady dentist. But then I thought, well, maybe people are asking me this, not because they want to make me mad, but what if they just really want to know? And so then I asked myself, well, what is it like to be a woman comedian? And I thought about it, and I thought, well, it's just like being a regular comedian, except for with the helping of misogyny, harassment, and all these things. And so what makes it what's hard is not the comedian part, right? It's the woman part. So thinking about that, like how is it difficult to be a woman who wants to do something,
right? And
thinking about whether or not I could play Lady Macbeth, those two ideas kind of came together to make Lady Macbeth and her pal Megan.
Wonderful. Beautiful story of two ideas falling in love and making a little Fringe baby.
Hello, baby.
So, of course, as you just mentioned, you say that you're asked this less now, but have been asked, what's it like being a woman in comedy? And so I'm curious about how maybe your reflections on that, on being a woman in comedy, might have changed over time. If you think the landscape of comedy has changed in the last few years, just sort of what reflections you have looking back on a piece that's only from 2 years ago, but 3 years ago, math. But a lot's changed in 3 years, as we know.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think if you look at comedy from 1,000 feet up, there's no question that it's changed enormously, especially from when I was starting out, which was like 90s, turn of the century, back in the day, the 20th century, darling. So certainly it's changed enormously. That said, on another level, it hasn't changed a whole lot. Like, I think I saw somewhere like Netflix had the most women comedy specials that it ever had, and it was like something like 20% of the specials were women, right? So on a certain level, the changes are perhaps slower than I'd like. And also on a micro level, like on the level of I'm a baby comic and I want to try out my jokes at this open mic at some bar.
Right.
It can be really prohibitive, I think, to be not just a woman, but anyone who is not a cisgendered straight white man. I think it can be hard in that environment. But there are other environments that are sort of popping up to make it a little more friendly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think a lot about, an avenue that I see so many women comics going to now is the podcasting world, in addition to the stand-up world. And I think about like all my friends' favorite podcasts that are funny are all by women, but that's not necessarily reflected in what we see in like stand up and, like you said, Netflix specials. You know, even
Yeah,
though it's
or TikTok. TikTok has a
yeah,
big presence for women because you don't get harassed. Like there aren't any gatekeepers. You can just
yeah,
pure, unadulterated, funny thing you want to do. That's
totally.
great.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's cool to see what new media we're coming up with, especially right now when it's like, what's a live performance? What is a live set without an audience? Even if, you know, you don't have hecklers, but you also don't have those people in front of you. I
Right.
think that's something we're all exploring, and it's a question I've been asking basically everyone I've had talkbacks with, like, what's going on? We actually just got an audience question from Ricky and Dana. Hey, y'all, thanks for
Hey.
tuning in. And they would like to know, how did you start weaving the theme of friendship and sisterhood through this funny story?
Well, so one of the thesis of the play, right, is coming back to reducing Lady M, which is another way of reducing all ambitious women, as evil, sexy, or crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a trap, right? And the whole sort of idea about patriarchy is that it's a trap, and that you can't win. The game's rigged. That's the whole point, right? And just about the time when a lot of women start to wake up to the fact that the game is rigged, it doesn't matter how many
Mm-hmm.
Spanx you wear. It doesn't matter what you weigh. It doesn't matter if you're too nice or not nice enough. Like there's no winning. Right
Yeah.
about when they wake up, society says, "Okay, we don't want you anymore." Right? You're middle aged. You're become an old crone. Like get out. And so, one of the things about the play Macbeth that I think find is very interesting, and something I want to tap into is that the only way to win is to not play, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a rigged game, the only way is to make up your own game. That's
Yeah.
the only way forward. And so I'm really struck when I read Shakespeare's Macbeth. Like the witches are the best part in the play. Like they're so much fun, and they smoking cigars, and they really don't care about what you think. And
Yeah.
and it's just very freeing. It's just a freeing place. And a lot of our great villains who are women often are the most fun. Like who wants
Right.
to be Ariel in Little Mermaid?
I was
Zero
just gonna
people.
say, like Ursula. Yeah. Yeah.
Ursula's the best part,
Amazing.
hands down. Cruella de Vil, the best part. Who wants to be the Dalmatian's mom character? Like, who can even remember? And I don't mean Perdita. I mean the human mom who's all legs and like, oh, dogs. Like, who wants to be her? Zero people. Everybody wants to be Cruella de Vil. So, but Cruella de Vil and Ursula and all of the villains and Lady M are also conscribed because they have to be evil, crazy, sexy, right? But witches get a bust out of that, right? And also, it's feeding into my revelation that I had about how when there's two women at the open mic, they're in a competition. But as soon as you get three women, then suddenly we're just people at an open mic. And like this idea of representation and diversity in the room, right, can really change the whole room.
Right.
Very exciting.
Right. Well, and diversity not meaning one or two token,
right,
whatever's different about the room, you know? Yeah. You have to have a space for that kind of sisterhood like you're talking about, or whatever sort of sibling, fraternity, whatever. Yeah.
It just takes you from being a dog walking on your hind legs to being a person.
Yeah.
And that's awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you are a playwright. You've written a lot. And I love digging through your website. Everyone should go look at it. So you've written a lot of plays. So tell me a little bit about, you know, what sort of draws you to writing a certain story? What might define your writing, if that can be done? Anything like that.
If you can imagine a Venn diagram that's 3 circles, one circle is funny, and one circle is feelings, and then one circle is like socio-political consciousness.
Awesome.
My dream play is right in the center. Like that's where I'm aiming for. And some of my plays are hit 2 out of 3 of those targets, but in general, that's kind of where I live. It's funny plus feelings plus social consciousness. So that's the kind of stuff that I do. And I've written plays for multiple casts, but my favorite thing to do is writing solo shows, and that's primarily what I've been doing the past few years.
Right. And you've had some solo shows performed by not you before, is that correct?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what is that like developing something, to be a solo act? If you've written it, it's probably personal. What's that like to have someone else doing that show?
It's eerie. It's very weird. I've seen clips of other people doing my work, and it's always I love it. I'm thrilled, and it makes me feel great as a playwright to know that the work lives on. It doesn't require this actor. It has an integrity on its own, which is really great. But it is a little eerie.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. That's why I asked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But my last solo show I wrote for another actor to do. Like so I hope that my work gets done by other actors.
Right.
That's the point. I want it to live on.
Yeah. And in terms of your playwriting sort of as a whole, do you tend to go towards these sort of autobiographical narratives, or do you tend towards more sort of external fiction stuff? Where does your work tend to lie on that spectrum or color wheel?
I think I'm probably most well known for semi-autobiographical work, and I call it semi-autobiographical work because everything's true except for the parts I make up.
Totally.
And I make up all kinds of. Usually, the most boring parts are usually the parts that I make up. Because I just gotta stitch these things together. But that's probably the thing that I'm most well known for. But I write all kinds of other things that are not just me talking about me or some fictional version of me. I try to just keep my hand in and keep pushing myself as a writer.
Great, that's awesome. Yeah, we got another audience question, this time from Nicole. Hi, Nicole. And Nicole wants to know that rewatching this show, Lady Macbeth and her pal Megan, 3 years later, what stands out to you?
Well, I am struck by how little I know. When I wrote this play, I wrote it in 2016, right? And it debuted in 2017. And when I wrote it thinking that Hillary Clinton was going to be elected president. And of course, I thought she was going to be elected president because that's what everybody said. That's what all the polls said. That's what everyone said. And even as I was writing it, I thought, oh, is this play going to be outdated? Like once we have a woman president, is this going to be like a gentle, like grace note over another era? And then I don't know, Kate, if you follow the news, but it turns out that she did not win the presidency.
No, really?
Yeah, surprise. Hillary Clinton did not win. And so then the whole play kind of took on this grief and real anger. That's very particularly American. Like I took this play to Edinburgh, and they were like, hooray! But I could always tell who the Americans were in the audience because the Americans were like, like they were so on fire about it in a way that those who had weathered Margaret Thatcher perhaps maybe weren't so fired up. So the world has really changed, and now, here we are in this sort of huge upheaval, this overdue upheaval, but a time of real uncertainty. The last 3 years have been very uncertain, and that uncertainty continues. And I just look at this person who made this recording and wrote this play, and I'm like, oh, there's so much coming that you don't know about. Like, buckle up, sister friend. Like, buckle up.
Yeah. Well, that's dark and very real. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Funny feelings.
Yes, there it is in the Venn diagram. So like I said before, I've been asking a lot of artists about sort of their relationship to live content right now, to digital content. So I saw on your website, the way that you are keeping live performance alive for yourself is this piece, The Tether. So tell us a little bit about The Tether and how you've been working as an artist, as a live artist, without our typical audience structure.
So in March, when I live in Iowa City, and when Iowa City went into quarantine in March, and the whole theater industry has shuttered to a halt, and I went through a real period of, I'll admit, complete depression and paralysis of like, well, what do we do? Because theater needs nothing. It doesn't need money. It doesn't need anything, but it does need one thing, which is the audience. And how do we gather, right? So I found myself asking the question, not only what can I do, like how can I reach my audience, but I think a bigger and deeper and harder question, which is what does my audience need right now?
Mm-hmm.
Like I can put all kinds of like delightful little bum motes on YouTube or whatever, but what do people need?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing I decided is what I was like, well, what do I need as an audience member? Like, what kind of theater do I want to see? And I want intimacy and I want connection.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote this short play called The Tether, where it's designed to be performed for a single household on their lawn or sidewalk. And I show up to your house and I have this big 10-foot rope that looks like a cartoon version of a rope. And I throw it, and that household holds on to one end and I hold on to the other. And I do this play. And the thing about it is, it has transformed me as an artist. It is so revelatory doing this play. I've done this play for a household who they just cried the whole time. And then I did it for another household who clearly they'd been stuck in their basement playing video games for too long and they were blinking like mole people out in the sun. And they just laughed and laughed and laughed the whole time. Like just the release, you know? And the play talks really sort of about how vulnerable we are and how we can't trust our leaders to take care of us, and where does that leave us, right? Yeah. So it's a very political play, but it's also a deeply felt play, and really sort of speaking to what I needed in that moment, and what my community needed too. So that's been really affirming.
Great. Yeah. So with that, with the takeaways from the Tether, I'm curious about, what you're thinking about moving forward. Are you thinking more about continuing this work, the Tether? Are you thinking about digital content? Are you anticipating, future live stuff? What's going on in that realm?
I'm very excited. The No Theater is doing a show of mine this that's opening in August called Feast, which is going to star Jen Joplin, which I'm so excited about. She's amazing. And I had written Feast as a dinner party play where the audience comes and you have dinner. But I'm in the middle of reimagining it for this sort of new digital world. And now I'm rewriting it for for Jen Joplin, cool. To be done as a virtual online experience. And it's very much theater. Like it's not a film, it's theater. And we're planning all kinds of like exciting surprises that I think are going to be really delicious. I won't spoil anything, but it's going to be very exciting. But it's just sort of reimagining, the black box as being our laptop screen, and finding ways to make three-dimensionality happen. Oh, I'm very excited about it.
I love that. Thinking of the computer screen as a black box.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah, and a magic box, right? Not just a film screen. Totally. Something that is magical.
Oh, I love that. Well, I'm very excited to see how that turns out, that reimagining. So what can we do to support you and your work moving forward? Where can we find your work? How can we keep enjoying your content? All that stuff.
Oh, well, definitely. I have a mailing list, megangogarty.com, but my next big thing, like the next hot thing, is happening right there in Cincinnati, your neighborhood. So like hook on to the No. Totally. The No Theater's one of the wonderful regional theaters, certainly in the Midwest, but also nationally. It's fantastic. The work y'all do is so great. So keep supporting the No Theater and you'll find me there.
Awesome. That is perfect. Well, since we have to move on to the news pretty quickly, I think we'll sign off with that unless there's anything else you want to add.
Go team, go. Stay safe.
Go team, go. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. And I just wanted to take a second to say thank you to everyone at the No for letting me be your Talkback producer. This has been a really, really fun experience. And I've gotten to steal so many wonderful little nuggets of knowledge from so many super cool fringe artists. So make sure if you want to watch more Talkbacks that you missed, they're all archived on the website, on the Facebook, on the YouTubes. And I think that's everything. And stay tuned for our Fringe News at 8:30. And thank you all so very much. Thank you, Megan. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thanks, everybody.